Hi, I'm Dennis Phillips, and welcome to Everyday Reloading and Shooting. So this video is going to be a little bit different. Most of the time when you watch me shoot, I'll shoot 10 5-shot groups of whatever loads or bullets I'm working with. In this case, I'm shooting 8 5-shot groups because I'm comparing two different weight bullets. They're both Hornady ELD match bullets, but one of these is a 130 grain and the other is a 140 grain bullet. And what I have done is I've looked in the manual and I've found the charge weights from 2,600 to 2,750 feet per second. The reason I'm going with that is 2,600 feet per second is the lowest velocity in the Hornady manual that has a load published for it. And for the 140 grain bullet, 2,750 feet per second is the highest velocity that has a published load. So if you look at these, this is all using hybrid 100V powder. And what I thought was interesting about this is the 130 grain column, this is the 140 grain column. So I've segregated these based on velocity, but I've put the charge weight here right below the target number. So what I thought was odd about this is that for 2,650 feet per second, the 130 ELD match takes 41.4 grains of powder. You would think that for a heavier bullet to achieve the same velocity, you would need a heavier charge weight, but it's actually lighter. So instead of 41.4, it's actually 39.7. So, and then the same if you look down here, 42.3 compared to 40.5, 43.2 compared to 41.3. The heavier bullet takes a lighter charge weight to achieve the same velocity. And I went on one of the forums that I'm on and I asked the question, why is that? And the explanation that I got from several people is that the 140 grain bullet is a longer bullet. You can't make them any bigger around, so to get more weight, you have to make them longer. And these both seat at the same overall length of 2.8 inches for the overall length. And since the bullet is longer, to get the overall length the same, more of the bullet has to fit inside of the cartridge, and that means there's going to be a higher pressure inside of that case because there's a smaller space for that powder to expand. I thought that was very interesting, but we're going to shoot these and see how they compare. 130 grain ELD match against a 140 grain ELD match. Here's the loads that I'll be shooting. So we'll get these bagged up, we'll take them to the range, and we'll see how they perform. We're back at the Georgia Gun Club, and I'm testing two different rounds today. I'm testing Hornady's 130 grain ELD match bullet and their 140 grain ELD match bullet. The charge weights on the groups are different, and that's because these are loaded based on velocity, based on what's shown in the reloading manual. So I've got rounds loaded at 2,600, 2,650, 2,700, and 2,750 feet per second. So we're going to run these and see how they compare. All right? You're welcome to enjoy the music while I fast forward through my shooting, or you can skip forward to the results at the end. right, let's see how they look. All right, we were pretty tight here and down here. This is shown to be a good load for that 140. I did not adjust the sights on any of these. So let's take them home, measure them, and see how we did. Here are my results from the comparison between the 130 grain ELD match bullet and the 140 grain ELD match bullet, both by Hornady. The difference here between these two columns, I've got the ELD match, the 130 in this column, and the 140 in this column. These were loaded with a different charge weight. So for example, in target 1, for the 130 grain ELD, I had 40.5 grains of powder, but for the 140, I had 38.9 grains of powder. And the reason for that is so that we would have the same velocity for each bullet. So we shot these at 2,600 feet per second, 2,650, 2,700, and 2,750. 2,750 was the fastest velocity rated for the 140 grain bullet, and faster speeds were available for the 130 grain. The slowest available load for the 130 grain was 2,600 feet per second. So we tested at 26, 2650, 27, and 2750. So at 2,600 feet per second, the 130 grain ELD match gave us a group of 0.82 inches with the best 4 out of 5 at 0.51. The 140 grain gave us a group of 0.61 inches. And look at this, the best 4 out of 5 grouped really tight at 0.24 inches. At 2650, they spread out a little bit. The 130 grain gave us a group of 105 with the best 4 out of 5 at 0.96. And the 140 grain gave us a group of 1.33. We had this flyer right here that threw us off. Otherwise, the best 4 out of 5 was at 0.79 inches. At 2,700 feet per second, the 130 grain gave us a group size of 130, and the best 4 out of 5 was 0.70. And of course, we had a flyer here that threw that group off. At the 140 grain, we had a group of 1.08 with the best 4 out of 5 at 0.71. And at 2,750 feet per second, the 130 grain had a group size of 1.31 with the best 4 out of 5 at 1.14. The 140 grain had a group size of 0.96 with the best 4 out of 5 at 0.77. If you average these out and take all of the group sizes for the 130 grain ELD match, we had an average extreme spread of 1.12 and the best 4 out of 5 grouped at 0.83. If you take all of the numbers for the 140 grain ELD match and average those, we had an extreme spread of 1 inch with the best 4 out of 5 at 0.63 inches. Overall, it seems like the 140 grain bullet performs better at those various speeds. It might be interesting to shoot them at the same charge weight and see how they do. They would have different velocities, but they would have the same charge weight behind them, pushing them forward. So we may do that. But in any event, this was also with the hybrid 100V powder. One of the things I noticed right off the bat is that both the 130 ELD match and the 140 prefer the lower 2600 velocity of this hybrid 100V powder and perform better at that velocity. So as we increase the velocity, one of the things I noticed is that the 130 was shooting more to the right and the 140 was shooting more on center, with 3 out of 5 shots being on the center line. At 2,700 feet per second, it still looks like the 130s are shooting to the right and the 140s are more all on center. But it's also interesting to note that the best 4 out of 5 on both of these are right together at 0.70 and 0.71. At 2,750 feet per second, both groups have opened up, but I notice that the 130s are still shooting to the right and the 140s are still shooting more centered. And of course, that's the reason why you don't typically shoot different bullet weights in the same test, because the weights of the bullet torque the barrel differently as the bullet travels down the rifling of the barrel. It has a twisting effect on the barrel, so a different charge weight or a heavier bullet will cause the bullet to twist more to the left or to the right as that barrel twists. The other takeaway from this is, if you're going to shoot the hybrid 100V powder using the 130 or the 140 grain ELD match bullet, my recommendation is that you stay with the lighter charge weights to keep it at 2,600 feet per second or possibly below, although the 140 doesn't allow anything lower than that. All right, those are my results. I appreciate you watching. If you have a load that works for you, or if you found a particular powder combination that works with either of these, the 130 or the 140, please leave a comment below. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. As always, I hope you will like and share this video with your friends, and please remember to subscribe. Thanks for watching.